Crew Pros is your one-call solution for everything your home needs. Whether it's heating and air, plumbing, complete roof replacement, whole home generators, and electrical repairs. Our professionals get the job done right. Crew Pros is your single source for high-quality home services at affordable prices. For everything your home needs, Crew Pros. Remodel, repair, replace.
Memphis. Nothing but Memphis. Everywhere we go, it's Memphis. Memphis, Tennessee, the beautiful land in the world.
And I'm thankful for this guy who tweeted and said I don't have that fire in my eyes no more. That game right there was for him. That's what I do. I prove people wrong each and every night, and that's for him right there.
Hi, this is Tom Izzo at Michigan State, and you're listening to Grizz 901.
Grizz Nation, what is going on? Welcome to another episode of Grizz 901. It's Tuesday, so you know we're here talking Grizzlies, talking everything Memphis basketball. I'd like to welcome you all to the show today. I am your host, Brandon Wakiji, a contributor over at Bluff City Media. I will be filling in for the lovely regular co-hosts of this podcast, Daniel Greer and Nathan Qualls, for the entire month of August. And what's better on a Tuesday than Grizzlies basketball? Nothing else. So let's jump right into the show for today. Before we do, though, I'd like to take a moment to present our sponsor of the show, which is Zach Jaworski State Farm, where they treat you like family. All right, so let's start things off today. I thought this week was going to be a pretty aside from the Jaren's debut in FIFA, which we will get to very soon with my guest of the night, very great guy Francis, coming on very soon. But we're gonna get to social media shenanigans because the Grizzlies, they made the social media airwaves this week. They really, in a lot of ways, really dominated the social media conversation. So let's talk about a few things here in terms of social media shenanigans. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to get to today is an off-season training video that I saw of Steven Adams, right? And in this off-season training video, he was shooting corner threes. If I recall, there was a similar video last summer where he was shooting threes and just kind of experimenting that aspect of his game. We know Steven Adams is, of course, coming back from the knee injury that kept him out of the second half of last season, really made him not very available. But in this offseason training video, he was shooting threes. He was stroking that thing. He was from the corner. Form looked really good, and he was shooting a lot of threes. So what are my thoughts on that? What do we think about Steven Adams potentially shooting threes? I'll say this. I don't think the best version of the Grizzlies is one where Steven Adams is going to come in and shoot a lot of threes. I just really don't think that's I don't think at this stage that's really beneficial for the Grizzlies as a whole, beneficial for the team. Even if there's anything that Steven Adams should be head over heels focused on, it's the free throw shooting. We know that last season he shot around 36% from the free throw line, which is not great to say the least, but the free throw form is obviously one that needs work. And when we talk about Steven Adams, the best version of Steven Adams is the one that is the strong shielder and screener, camping out in the paint, making Ja's life easier, making the point guard's life easier. And it's not one of him shooting threes. So while Steven Adams shooting threes would be an amazing development, I'd love it. I'd love it so much. I think the entirety of Memphis, Tennessee would crap their pants and give the biggest "yeah, buddy" I've ever seen in my entire life if Steven Adams shoots a three. That's not something that I'm really expecting Steven Adams to do this season. We gotta temper expectations a bit. All these guys have training regimens. All these guys have different forms of training that they do over the course of the offseason. But crazy, as an aside, though, I thought his form shooting threes was much better than his free throw form. I like the mechanics, the shot of everything. I thought that was way better than anything that I've seen of that free throw form. So I don't know if there's any way to transfer his 3-point like practice shooting powers over to his 3-point form, that'd be pretty nice. That'd be pretty incredible. But Steven Adams shooting threes doesn't really, I don't know, it doesn't really move me. It doesn't really move. I don't really think it like parts the seas or anything, or is this amazing development. Steven Adams is best as a traditional center, as a traditional pick and roll center, and shooting threes is not really something that I expect him to do. But I mean, it's good to know that he's working on them, and maybe in garbage time, maybe in a game that the Grizzlies are blowing somebody out, that they go to Steven Adams, say, hey, shoot some threes. But that, I don't know. It was interesting to see that, and interesting to see that he's working on that. I don't know how that's going to factor in, but all things considered. All right, next thing I want to talk about is, we know this is a dead season period in the NBA. We know that all these national media outlets are looking for something to kind of excite the fans, or looking for something to stay relevant during this dead period of the basketball season. So a few things made the round this week. For one, the NBA released their top 10 teams after the offseason, and the Grizzlies were ranked number 7 on this list. Ranked ahead of them were the Phoenix. I don't have all the teams, but I know the Phoenix Suns were definitely one. The LA Lakers were also one. A few other teams too. And I talked about this on the Twitter waves earlier, but it seems like the narrative has kind of shifted to where, okay, so when Ja was on the team, right, the narrative was the Grizzlies play better without Ja Morant. The Grizzlies are function as a better team without Ja Morant. They pulled up those stats, yada yada, right? But now it seems like the conversation is, okay, without Ja Morant, without their superstar point guard, who are the Grizzlies now? Who are they? Like what is their identity? What are they trying to do? Like, can they win? Can they do all these things? And so, look, it seems like the Grizzlies are back to being underrated. And whichever way you take this, I don't see how a team that finished top 4 in the East, when you consider what they dealt with. You had Steven Adams go down second half of the season. You had Brandon Clark go down with the Achilles injury. And yes, while they might not have had a splash off season, which we'll get to later, they did make many impactful signings to this team. And I've never really understood this kind of narrative that goes around every single summer, where people don't regard the Grizzlies as clearly a top team in the NBA. We know they're clearly a top defensive team in the NBA, despite the offensive limitations, right? We know the half court offense has always been in the middle of the pack. It's been in the middle of the league, but the defense is what makes the Grizzlies great. And it just seems like it's just kind of like, right, the definition of insanity is like doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I feel like, just in terms of like the media and how the media portrays the Grizzlies, like it's a form of insanity where like, okay, they're like, okay, the Grizzlies they're set up to disappoint this year. They're set up to not be as great a team this year. Every single summer, they think they're not going to meet expectations. They're not going to be as great as they were the previous season. And I don't know. I've never really understood that. I've never really understood why that's a narrative here, especially when you consider what the Grizzlies are going to be doing next season. Not going to have Ja for the first 25 games, but you're going to have Jaren Jackson Jr. You're going to have him and what we've seen of him so far, again, which we will discuss in further detail later on. But you're going to have other guys in Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane, 2 emerging young stars in this league, show and really have a chance to prove themselves on a bigger stage. And I've never understood why it's just every year like clockwork. They think the Grizzlies are not going to do something. They're going to be like a pretty consistently good team, but they're not going to make any noise. And I think that's going to factor into when you think about scheduling and broadcasting. I don't expect the Grizzlies to have many national TV games because a lot of people think the Grizzlies are, they're just Ja Morant, like he's the face of the team, nobody else. So I don't expect them to have many national TV games. I don't expect them to be like actively or widely talked about in those 25 games before the season starts. But I also think this team thrives on being underrated. And so, and in any way you see this, you could say the Grizzlies are right where they want to be looked at, right? Because no one's really going to consider them, or not many are going to consider them a, behemoth championship contender or anything of the like. So they can just play their game. They can just play their game the own way and shock the world through their gameplay. And that's what I think we're going to see this season. I've never been a fan of the whole ranking things, like these whole player rankings, like young core rankings. Another one from Bleacher Report said did not have Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. ridiculously enough in their top 5 of duos in the NBA. And I don't know, like it's just like the Grizzlies have just now become this like really good team that people acknowledge, but no one really wants to talk about as a legitimate championship threat. And I don't know why it's that way, but it is that way. And because of that, they just have a chance to play their game the right way and shatter expectations. The last thing I want to touch upon here, that's going to, again, lead into a huge part of the show today, is Jaren Jackson Jr., Joe Varden of The Athletic. He released an article earlier this week about how Jaren Jackson Jr. in the FIBA World Cup training camp was voted as the best player on that FIBA World Cup training team that's going to participate. They just had their first exhibition match against Puerto Rico, and Jaren Jackson Jr. was voted as the best player. And I think for me, okay, look, you can, I think a lot of people said like, oh, it's just some like silly, small little player poll that was taken over the FIBA tournament. But to me, that matters, that other players in the league see the talent of Jaren Jackson Jr., they comprehend the talent of Jaren Jackson Jr. and who he is. And that FIBA team has a lot of young talents too, between Anthony Edwards, Mikal Bridges, Austin Reeves. Like you have a lot of young guys who are coming into their own into the league. But I think it means something that other players and other professionals around the NBA actually they see Jaren Jackson Jr.'s talent and they see how dominant it is. And it's going to go into a point I was talking with when I had Luke Hatmaker on the podcast last week, is that this FIBA tournament is really going to be the start of what is going to be a extremely dominant all NBA caliber season from Jaren Jackson Jr. We're really seeing him coming into his own as one of the most dominant players in the league on both ends. And this FIBA tournament is really going to show us why, because he's going to be put in situations that he's never been put into before as a huge part of this tournament. But based off Jaren Jackson Jr. and based off that point, I am happy to bring on our next guest onto the show, a guy who needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway because he is a very rad guy. I've got Francis Carlotta this week. Francis Carlotta works side by side with me at Bluff City Media. He writes articles for the Grizzlies, but he is also a feature writer for the Memphis Tigers. He also hosts the Up and Under podcast on the Off the Ball Network. Francis is the definition of a true hoop head, and we are really happy to have him onto the show today. So without further ado, let's welcome Francis Carlotta onto the show.
Oh, I like that.
Francis, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good. I'm doing well. Two West Coast guys. It's around dinner time for us. I just ate a nice burger with some onion rings and some sweet potato fries. So I'm happy. I'm full and I'm ready to talk basketball. So let's do it, man. Thanks for having me on, and shout out to Grizz 901 and the show and everything. It's awesome that you're hosting for this period. You're the man. So thanks. Let's get into it, bro.
Dude, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on, Francis. Like I said, let's get right into it. This was a really eventful week for the Grizzlies. Like not that I hate, but like this month we knew that this month of August, Jaren Jackson Jr. was going to be playing in the FIBA World Cup. So we're going to be talking about Jaren Jackson Jr. a lot over the course of this month. And we saw that first iteration of what Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be for this team and for the Grizzlies coming into next season in that opening exhibition match of the FIBA World Cup, where he finished with 12 points. He scored 8 of the first 10 points and 2 blocks. It was just an all-around dominant force on the court. First play of the game. Bully ball, Jaren Jackson Jr. Steve Kerr went right to him. I mean, we saw in the opening of that game, Jaren Jackson Jr. being the best player on the floor on both ends. And I think when you think about just like going in, I remember I listened to the Chris Vernon show this week. He talked about how he talked to some scouts in the NBA, and they had been talking about in terms of linking up to the 2018 draft. They were going through the list and they were talking about Jaren Jackson Jr. And then Chris Vernon said that scout told to him, he was a guy that, he just give him 5 years, but he can end up being the best player, the best all around player in this draft. And that exhibition game that I saw against Puerto Rico, how Jaren performed, that just brought that to life, because he was clearly far and away the first few minutes of that game the best player on the draft. So Francis, tell me like what were your thoughts just seeing Jaren Jackson on that international stage, on the bigger stage, and what do you think this means moving forward for the Memphis Grizzlies and Jaren as that FIBA World Cup team gets deeper into the tournament?
Yeah, so I'll break apart that question into 3 parts. So first, USA basketball wise, I mean, look, dude looks good with the USA across his chest, don't he? I mean, he looks good in that jersey. I think there's a legit chance that, there's always a thing with the USA stars, and if they want to commit to playing for the national team, if he commits, I don't see any coach, any program, anybody saying, no, Jaren, you're not going to play for us. Like, nah, he fits perfectly for the FIBA World Game. He's the perfect center who's versatile, strong, can bully people at the rim, but can space you out, can push the ball, who's athletic, can run as well. I mean, he's the perfect big for FIBA basketball, especially with the goaltending rule not being a thing in FIBA. I mean, he's going to eat. I mean, 2 blocks in that game, but he didn't play a lot of minutes, and it's just an exhibition. So I'm sure as the games go on, as we enter FIBA World Cup play, and his minutes ramp up, I mean, he'll average probably 3.5, 4 blocks a game. And I don't think that's a reach by any stretch of the imagination. For Memphis, what I liked from his performance in the game was actually how he was used also as a screener. He was a ball screener for a lot of the time he was on the floor offensively. And I want to see that more with the Grizzlies, whether it's him and Marcus Smart with Ja Morant for the first 25 games, as we're all well aware of, whether it's him and Marcus Smart, him and Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane has gotten better as a pick and roll ball handler, turning the corner, making the right read, and using his frame, because he doesn't have the longest arms, but his frame to finish at the rim. So I want to see that more. I want to see Jaren get used more as a screener, and I trust our guards to make the right read. And this dude looks massive. That is a big man. He cleared out space like it was nothing. And granted, it's Puerto Rico, not the largest, most physical team, to be fair, but he looked like a grown man. So I think for Memphis, I think it bodes well to show signs of him expanding his offensive role besides just being a back to the basket guy and a shooter. I want to see him more as a screener and see him being as a role man utilized more with Memphis. And then for him personally, I mean, like you said, like you and Luke talked about it on the last show, this will be a springboard for Jaren's, let's just say it, all NBA year. He should be an all NBA team member at the end of next season. And hey, with no Ja Morant for the first 25 games, the Triple J MVP train, are we gonna have to start, hyping that up?
Oh yeah, we're gonna have to start having some conversations.
He's gonna get the numbers, he'll get the looks. I'm just saying.
I think you couldn't have described it perfectly. I think the way Steve Kerr just utilized him, and we had talked about it. I think Steve Kerr he has been chomping at the bit for a player of Jaren's caliber, a guy who is just a physical, imposing force who can run around the floor, space the floor, set screens, like defend in space, defend on the perimeter, be a dominant force all around the court. Steve Kerr has been chomping at the bit for that guy, and you saw how he used him. He used him in a lot of dribble handoffs off the top of the key. He had him operate as a roll to the rim kind of center. It's like every single possession, setting screens, rolling to the rim. I think Taylor Jenkins can take what Jaren showed in that game and really just use that to not only enhance the Grizzlies offense as a whole, but really enhance Jaren's overall profile as a player. Like I don't know what Taylor Jenkins was doing during that game, but like if he wasn't watching, just like eyes glued to the screen, just like writing notes like every single chance he could get, because like look Jaren. Using Jaren at the using in FIBA play, right? Just using Jaren, having him as that de facto 5 right there, like that just unlocks all aspects of his game, because he has that entire paint to operate. He has trusted point guards in Halliburton and Brunson to run pick and rolls with, run to the rim with. Like that mix of strength and athleticism, I thought really showed with Jaren as the de facto big. And okay, people want to talk about the fouls. Okay, look, like I kind of thought I for one, like I thought like not the first foul, but like I think like the second foul where Brandon Ingram trying to make a pass to him, and then he missed time catching the pass, and then Tremont Waters fell on the ball, and I don't know, like some of those fouls were ticky-tacky, but all things aside, I thought in that game showed like why it showed not only the growth that Jaren Jackson Jr. has presented over the course of the season, but what he can really be in the league, which is one of the best, not only one of the most dominant 2A players, one of the most dominant players in general, because he can not only have that physical advantage inside, but also when you talk about I don't even think he attempted a single 3 in that game. I'm not sure if I'm 100. I don't think he did. But to do what he did without even shooting a perimeter shot, which Jaren Jackson Jr. can do and loves to do, it says so much about the future of Jaren Jackson Jr. for the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, I fully agree, and it's awesome to see. And like you said in your intro part, talking about everything that's going on social media, seeing the praise from his teammates as well for Jaren Jackson Jr. It's cool to see the NBA as a whole starting to realize what we've known as Grizzlies fans for years, that Jaren Jackson's ceiling is genuinely unlimited. It's an insanely high ceiling, and I've said this in the past. There is a world where Jaren Jackson Jr., in terms of like NBA player rankings, which at the end of the day, who really cares, especially as teammates, but there's a world where Jaren is ranked higher than Ja, because Jaren's ceiling is higher. It is. He just won Defensive Player of the Year. So say he keeps that defensive level up, not to say he's going to win the award every single year, but say he's a mainstay as a first team, second team, all defense guy in the NBA. You improve offensively, you average 25 points a game with 8 to 10 rebounds a game, still averaging 2.5 blocks and 1.5 steals. That's insane. That's first team, at worst second team, all NBA level stats, and you're in the MVP conversation every year if you do that on a consistent basis. So I mean, I love Ja, we love Ja, but I really believe there's a world where Jaren is the best player on the team.
I fully agree. I think what Jaren can do on both ends is not only
it's hard.
It's hard, man. No one on the Grizzlies can do that. There are not many people in the league who can do what Jaren Jackson Jr. can do on both ends. That's what makes him such a cheat code for FIBA, where he might average double-digit blocks. Let's be honest, dude. That guy could just go just be hanging on the cylinder. You can just swap that thing up. Like, dude, this game was made for him. And I think not only are we going to see that growth in not only his gameplay, but we'll also talk about the growth in his maturity. Over the course of the summer, he has become so much more of a vocal leader because he is the longest tenured Grizzly on the team, right? And that comes, he's embraced that role of being that leader on the floor because, Ja being out due to obvious reasons, he has embraced that role of being the leader on the team. And I think that's just really special to see a player just grow into their own like that.
Yeah. Fully agree.
Yeah. But dude, next I for one, like I'm just excited that like we're getting basketball in the month of August because typically like that's not a thing, right? And then the US gets to face
like high level basketball too. It's
high level basketball. That team is very talented. I saw all of those like social media people getting off like their think pieces that this team like this team is weak.
Stop.
Like
I don't want to hear it. Stop. This team is loaded with talent. It may not be like superstars or mega stars, but I said this. It's an NBA nerd's wet dream. Like this team, analytically, is perfect. Like it has it all analytically and stylistically and modern basketball wise. It's perfect. It's a really, really good basketball team that, looking at the other rosters should dominate. It should win. Heck, I mean, I think the best team that they'll face is probably Canada. Actually, I think Canada's got a really good squad. So that they might be the best team they face as a whole. I mean, Australia is really good as well. They've got a lot of NBA talent. Josh Giddey, Joe Ingles, other guys that I can't remember off the top of my head. Spain's got our boy Santi Aldama, and I'm really excited to see Santi because hopefully I love to see him get unlocked playing for the Spanish national team. He'll be one of their more like well-known names on the roster, and offensively he's going to be one of their better players on the offense. So I'm curious to see what they do with him, and we're going to talk about the front court in a bit, but it's very intriguing to see what's going to happen with Santi Aldama moving forward as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Also like while we're here, shout out Santi because I know in the Spanish national exhibition game, he scored like double digit points in like 15 minutes or something crazy like that. So just seeing players like Jaren, like Santi have these renaissance moments in different environments, it just makes you more excited for what they're going to bring when the season starts, because the things they're going to learn, the things they're going to experience, just playing on a different level, me being coached by different people, playing with different players that they normally don't ever play against. Like it's going to be special and it's going to be really different. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited for the US to get their first test of sorts because they will be playing Slovenia this weekend. It's Luka, who is fresh off a 30-point triple-double.
He's pretty good.
Yeah, he's pretty good. He's pretty good, right? Right.
He's
in the Southwest Division, no less. So that's going to be a great first test for them. They're going to play Spain the following weekend too. So I'm really glad that Team USA is going to get tested early on, just even before the games start to count. I think that'll be great for their maturity and their growth as players. But talking about the off season, we're still in the off season. We're still preparing for training camp, right?
Yep.
So now what I want to talk about is the off season additions, right? Because the Grizzlies, well, they didn't have what you might call a splashy off season. Right? They didn't get like a marquee big name highlight free agent. They still made many impactful additions to this team over the course of the offseason, given the landscape, given the sphere. So I want to give some offseason grades. I want to start with, just like all the new guys who are coming into the Grizzlies. We know I talked about, I think this is a period of transition for the Grizzlies, right? Because they've made this jump in phases where they're like, okay, we're going to really get serious about building a sustained championship team. And we're going to find the players who can do that for us. And I think that's really what we saw this offseason in their addition. So I want to start with Marcus Smart because I think he was the biggest guy, right? And I think in many ways he is expected to replace what Dylan Brooks brought for this team, to replace what Tyus Jones brought for this team in many ways. So
yeah, I
got some thoughts on Marcus Smart. And, before I get just tons of hate DMs and just tons of Twitter replies. I'm gonna be real, and I'm gonna grade. We're gonna have grades for each of the offseason editions, right?
Okay.
And,
Yep.
y'all can come in my replies, come in my mentions, okay? But I'm starting with Marcus Smart, right? I'm gonna give the Marcus Smart signing an A-, right? For one, this is not like this. This is in no way. I'm in no way like criticizing Marcus Smart as a player. I think Marcus Smart is a fantastic addition to this team. He was a DPOY right before Jaren won it last season. We know what Marcus Smart can do. We know that he can make plays not only in regular season moments but playoff moments. He's hit big shots. He's been a part of multiple Celtics teams that have made deep playoff runs, right? But when I just kind of analyzed and evaluated this signing of Marcus Smart, I thought about a few things, right? I thought for one the value of the trade, it made me kind of turn my head a little bit. We know in that it was a 3-team trade between the Grizzlies, the Boston Celtics, and the Washington Wizards, in which Grizzlies got Marcus Smart. They sent Tyus Jones to the Wizards. They sent 2 first-round picks to the Boston Celtics. The Celtics also obviously got Kristaps Porzingis, so they signed to an extension. And so in terms of value, while the Grizzlies got Marcus Smart, who was an excellent player, I thought 2 first-round picks was pretty steep. I'll come right with it. I thought 2 first-round picks was pretty steep, especially when you consider that they sent Tyus Jones to the Washington Wizards for, I don't want to say essentially nothing, but like they didn't really get, like, think about it. You gave up 2 first-round picks and Tyus Jones. And I was told, like, from what I read, like just over the course of the season, I was told Tyus Jones was this asset on an expiring deal. And at least from like the Washington Wizards side of things, the Grizzlies didn't really get much back for Tyus Jones. Like they just kind of gave him away to from what I like, Washington didn't give the Grizzlies anything back in return. And 2 first-round picks, while okay, they ended up being the first pick of which was a pick in the most recent draft, right? And second, which was the Golden State Warriors pick that the Grizzlies got in the Andre Iguodala trade. So they still own all of their first-round picks moving forward, and they didn't. So technically, the Grizzlies didn't give up any of their own future picks or assets. I thought the value of that trade was kind of lopsided, and I understand that you're getting a great player in Marcus Smart, but I don't know. To me, assets are still assets, and I thought the value of that trade was lopsided. So that was my first kind of thing with the trade. My first kind of gripe with that transaction, right? The second of which is that while I think Marcus Smart will be a very impactful player for this team, Marcus Smart is a guy who can help you win championships. We already know that. I think he's going to help the Grizzlies make deep playoff runs, championship runs as well. I also think in a few ways he was kind of a backup plan. Like he was kind of a plan B. I don't think the Grizzlies went into the offseason thinking like Marcus Smart is our number 1 guy, right? We knew that guy, that mold of a player was your 3-and-D wing, your tall 3-and-D wing who can shoot the 3 at a very high clip and defend at a very high clip. And Marcus Smart, no doubt, he defends at a very high clip. He's one of the best perimeter defenders in the game of basketball right now, but he also can't. And Marcus Smart also plays bigger than his size. He can guard the 1 through 4 very effectively. He very often plays bigger than himself. He can play bigger than himself, but from 3, he is also not. He's not the greatest of threats. He shot around 34% from 3 this past season. He did up it in the playoffs a little bit, 36%, right? But he's not a certified sniper. And that, while that won't be an issue in the first 25 games of the season because he's going to be playing that primary point guard position, you got to think about when Ja comes back. For one, Marcus Smart he's not going to the bench because you're not going to put your best perimeter defender. You're not going to bring your best perimeter defender off the bench unless I miss something. But starting lineups are going to be some variation of Ja, Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Steven Adams. The spacing of that, I'm not overly concerned about it, but I don't it does make me kind of, I just have some thoughts about the spacing, because in there you only really have Desmond Bane, one of the best 3-point shooters in this league. Jaren Jackson Jr., another great 3-point shooter, but the spacing of that, I do have just a few questions about once just kind of seeing that translate to the court. But in those first 25 games without Ja, we know Marcus Smart will occupy the primary point guard position, so that won't be an issue. So because of that, I just can't give a perfect, A grade. And as the professor of Grizzology, coined by Luke Hatmaker, shout out, I'm a hard grader. I expect quality, I expect perfection. So that's why I give that signing an A-. But Francis, I'm gonna turn it over to you. What have you?
So I fully respect your title, Brandon. 100%. You're very well deserving of that title. No question at all. Maybe I'm just a nicer grader, and I feel like that's pretty on brand for anybody who knows me, who's ever interacted with me. I'm a pretty nice guy. I'm pretty lenient. Maybe I'm too nice. Who knows? Maybe I'm too nice. But either way, I give it an A. I give it a solid A. A+? No, not an A+. Those are. I mean, you would have had to, I don't know, trade for, I don't know, Mikal, or something. Yeah. You would have had to get Mikal Bridges for an A+. Even if you had to trade like Kleiman's left hand or something, it doesn't matter. You still got Mikal Bridges. Anyway, so yeah, from Marcus Smart, I give it an A. So I do want to say, for the point you brought up about Marcus Smart likely not being their top option, in the press conference, Zach Kleiman's press conference with Marcus Smart and Taylor Jenkins in Vegas, I was very lucky to be covering that for Bluff City Media. Kleiman was very adamant that he was at the top of any list of guys that they would have loved to have additions in the offseason. Marcus Smart was at the top of their list. Okay. Now, Brandon, is that just lip service because Marcus Smart's sitting right next to you? Maybe. I mean, who knows? We'll never know if that's really true or not. We'll never know. Mm-hmm. But that's what he said. And, I'm willing to take him at his word that when Marcus Smart was even remotely available and the deal went down between Brogdon, it fell apart with Brogdon going to the Clippers because of injury issues. And when Marcus Smart was even a possibility, Kleiman was like, yeah, we're in. Let's get into this trade. Let's figure out how we can bring Marcus Smart to Memphis. So again, if it's lip service, who knows? Is it real? Is it for real? Who knows? But that's what he said, and I'll take him at his word. In terms of the issues from three, I think those are very fair. There's no reason to hide the ball in his 3-point percentage. We all know what it is, like you said, around 34%. I think it's 34.6. I think it's what it is off the top of my head.
Don't get me wrong. Better than Dylan Brooks. All right. Absolutely better than Dylan Brooks. Better than Dylan Brooks shooting toward it. Please. No one misinterpret me there. Better than Dylan Brooks shooting toward dates in every single way.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So I look at this trade from two. Oh, actually, I'll address the value thing too, because I want to touch on all your points. Yeah. I think I've heard that a lot in terms of pushback for people who are not as high on the Smart trade as I am, with giving up 2 first-round picks and Tyus Jones. And shout out to my podcast, The Up and Under, my co-host Grant Heckinger. He was very clear, like, you trade Tyus Jones, you're trading a first-round pick because that's his worth. Tyus Jones is a damn good point guard who should be worth a first-round pick. And you just give him up for basically nothing, so that's you lose on that asset. So that's fair. I totally get that. The pick this year, not a lot of value. Pick 25. I mean, because you have hit a home run, very possible. But we ended up drafting G.G. Jackson in the second round, which a lot of people thought that Memphis might get at 25, and they got him at 44. If I'm remembering his draft pick correctly. Sure. So, it's 6 to 1, half a dozen of the other. It's not. I don't think that's that bad. And like you stated, they still have their future picks as well. So look, it's still interesting for the Grizzlies when you talk about teams with assets, young players. If they still want to go for a guy in heck, maybe even at the trade deadline, who knows? They have that ability. They still have assets. They still have young guys. They have tradable contracts. So they didn't sacrifice the farm, and they got a guy in Marcus Smart. So now we'll talk about the basketball fit. We got a guy in Marcus Smart who's a genuine upgrade from Dylan Brooks. And I know it's kind of low-hanging fruit to compare Marcus to Dylan, but let's be real. when Dylan, it was clear that he wasn't going to be in Memphis, that was one of the biggest questions in the offseason was who's going to replace Dylan Brooks? Who's going to be that guy who's going to be that defensive stopper, got to get into guys' grills, piss them off, and really bother them defensively. That we need that. I mean, every team needs that. I firmly believe that. And Marcus Smart is perfect in that role. And then offensively, I mean, again, this is not a bash Dylan Brooks episode. So we know the deficiencies of his best offensive game. Marcus is a better shooter. Yeah. He's better at the rim by far. He's better in the mid range as well. You know, how many times did Dylan Brooks get into the mid range and just shoot something up there and you're just confused? Like, why? What's happening? At least Smart's somewhat efficient in the mid range. And not just that, my biggest thing is Smart as a passer. I mean, he averaged around 6 assists per game last season. He can genuinely play make once he gets downhill and make great open shots for other people. I mean, Dylan Brooks's assist percentage last season was 11.7. Marcus Smart's last season was 26.4. I mean, that's day and night difference in terms of assist percentage. So I think there's genuine value that Marcus Smart will bring offensively. Defensively, you know, obviously, again, Dylan, second team all defense. So happy for him that he was able to get that accolade. He deserved it. He definitely deserved it. But even then, Marcus Smart is just a better defender. He's just better than Dylan Brooks as a defender. He actually averaged more steals than Dylan Brooks and had a better defensive win share and defensive box plus minus than Dylan Brooks. So, I mean, Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year 2 years ago. We have the two most recent Defensive Player of the Years on the same roster, which, I mean, that's insane. That's really cool. So, no, I think it's a genuine upgrade. And the size issue is there. It doesn't solve all the issues of the Memphis Grizzlies. There's still a gaping hole at the 3 when Ja comes back. Because, again, you're probably going to have Ja, Smart, Bane, Jaren, and Steven as your closing 5, you know, and I don't like to talk about starting 5s anymore because who cares? It's about closing 5s. So
absolutely.
I'm taking that. Right there I'm taking that out of my lexicon as a basketball hoop head. I don't care about starting 5s. I want to care about who's closing games. So that lineup is probably going to close games for Memphis. And you know, you worry about you have Desmond Bane who's 6'5" with a 6'4" wingspan playing the 3. I get it. You know, there's issues if you're playing Phoenix in the conference finals. Who's long enough to guard KD? Well, they got a guy named Jaren who I think would do a pretty darn good job against him. And you put Marcus Smart on Devin Booker, and then Bradley Beal. You can put Bane on Brad Beal. I don't think that's too bad. You know, Bane isn't an all-world defender, but he's an above average to good defender, and he can still cause problems for Brad Beal too. So look, I really think a lot of the issues of size are alleviated with having Jaren Jackson and Steven Adams as your front court tandem. And again, we'll talk about the front court in a moment, but they solve a lot of issues, I think, with the Grizzlies' lack of size in their backcourt / wing position. So without Triple J, without Steven, then I think there could be real issues for Memphis defensively. But that's not rocket science, Brandon. You know that if either of them went down, Memphis is going to have issues on defense. If either of them. So but that's just how it goes. We got to hope they stay healthy. But I still really like the Marcus Smart trade. And I'll give it a solid A.
Okay, absolutely agree. I think the Grizzlies will really see that value in the trade in the first 25 games of the season because Marcus Smart is a guy who can seamlessly fit into that starting point guard position, operate the offense, handle the ball, just be that on-court facilitator as we saw him do for Boston. And the experience that Marcus Smart brings is just unprecedented. This is a guy who's been in finals games, been in finals matchups, knows how to hit big time shots in the playoffs. So he is a huge get for Memphis, and I hope my words aren't misinterpreted to think that, but he is a huge addition for this team, and also on a great contract. Have him locked down for the next, I believe 3 seasons.
3 seasons at about 16 to 18, something like that. So
consider the cap rising up. Very solid, very solid. Again, just me being really picky and
Again, I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Going into things,
no, actually, I take it back. Everyone flood Brandon's mentions, flood his DMs, send him hate. I'm just playing. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, totally. Next, I want to move on to is Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose, he was signed to a 2-year contract, the first year fully guaranteed, second year non-guaranteed. And I'm gonna give the signing an A. I think Derrick Rose is what this team needed. They needed a veteran. Not only did they need a veteran, but they needed a veteran who really understood the city, understood the culture of the city. And we know Derrick Rose. We know Derrick Rose knows Memphis is Memphis in so many ways. But most importantly, it's about Ja Morant. It's about Ja Morant, who is the face of the franchise. Who can you bring in that can not only help him elevate himself as a player, but also bring a direct impact to the team, right? On the New York Knicks, we know that he tore it the second half of the season, didn't see a lot of playing time for the Knicks, but I don't believe that was purely talent reasons. Emmanuel Quickley was coming into his own. The Knicks also signed Jalen Brunson, who is a 6-foot guard, and you got to think about fit. You got to think about you have to think. You just got to think about having all the smaller guards on the floor, especially when Emmanuel Quickley had a 6th man of the year caliber season. And I don't believe him getting less minutes of New York is any kind of indication of his talent level. I think, especially when you consider the first 25 games of the season, you're not going to have Ja. Like, Tyus is off this team now. You need somebody off the bench who can also facilitate the offense, get you baskets, get you buckets, be aggressive on offense. Derrick Rose can do all those things. And I think in the first 25 games of the season, we're really going to see that too, as that backup point guard. And I think from what I've seen a lot of people think Derrick Rose is just going to kind of be on this team as a body on the bench and someone who's, going to get frequent DMPs and, just kind of be that locker room guy. Sort of like a Udonis Haslem for the Heat, not really going to see a lot of on-court time. I think the opposite. I think especially in these first 25 games, the Grizzlies are going to need somebody. You got Marcus Smart, who will run the offense, run the show, and that starting unit. But off the bench, look, if Derrick Rose plays great in those 25 games, there's no way that you can just give him DMPs, even after Ja comes back, right? Yeah. And especially if Marcus Smart is in that starting lineup. So I think Derrick Rose can just contribute a lot to this team, just not only off the court, but even on the court. Having someone off the bench who is a bucket getter, can score in multiple ways. No, he's not like the biggest 3-point threat, right? He doesn't solve like all of the Grizzlies' biggest issues. But if you had Tyus Jones, considering you had Tyus Jones leading this team, there is a hole at the backup point guard position. And I think Derrick Rose can fill that very admirably. So I give that an A just because I think the combination of the culture fit and the on-court fit is going to be really great for the Grizzlies.
Okay. Yeah, I think those are awesome points. And it's, when Derrick Rose, once we got that notification that Derrick Rose was going to be a Memphis Grizzly, I mean,
parade inside my city.
I cried. Honestly, I cried. Because as someone we're from Memphis, we love the city. I grew up a Tigers fan. I'm sure you did as well. And it's just knowing what he means to the city of Memphis. And I said this on Twitter. There are 2 cities in America who love Derrick Rose like their own. Chicago, obviously, and Memphis. We love Derrick Rose. And even at this age, even at 33, 34 years old, that he's going to be in Memphis in the twilight of his career, he's coming back. He's coming back to Memphis, Tennessee, where his journey, a superstar journey, really started. Obviously, he was a phenom in Chicago, playing hoops in high school at Simeon High, but coming to Memphis and like that. This is it. This is I have a Memphis Tigers Derrick Rose jersey in my closet. I should have worn it for the episode. But no, it's amazing. I'm very excited. The ovation he's going to get when he steps on the floor the first time. I mean, I might even cry again. I'll definitely get goosebumps. That's for sure. Yeah. I'm so excited. But with that said, I give it an A- mainly because I just don't know how much he has in the tank. And that's not a knock on D Rose. I just don't know. I gotta see it. I gotta see it. Last season he only played around 12 minutes a game, averaging 5.6 points. The season before, he had a good year. He played about 24 minutes a game, averaged around 12 points a game. So it makes sense for his numbers to diminish basically in half because his minutes per game went down by half. So, it makes sense why his numbers dropped. But I just got to see it. I want to see him on the floor. I want to see him contribute on offense and hold his own on defense. Like, I just got to see it. But I can't give this below an A- because of, like you mentioned, the locker room presence. I've had many people talk to me and say, "Hey, Francis, how do you feel about Marcus Smart and Derrick Rose on Memphis?" And my response is basically it's always the same. If Ja doesn't listen to Marcus Smart and Derrick Rose, who is he listening to?
Who?
Brandon? Who's he listening to?
Who is he listening to, man?
What better guys?
Yeah.
What better guys to have in your locker room? And this is an example for me of Kleiman playing chess, everyone else playing checkers. Nobody saw Derrick Rose coming back to Memphis. Nobody saw that. No one saw that happen.
No one. Yeah, I know they were interested. They had been, it was like a couple of seasons ago. Like they were rumblings, right? Back.
Yeah.
That he of course signed with the Knicks,
right?
Instead, but he had been on the radar.
But no one expected it when it happened. No one was like, "Oh yeah, I saw that coming." Haha, like screw everybody. No one saw that coming. No one. And it's an example of Kleiman realizing what this team needs and taking measures to address what this team needs. They needed veterans. They needed leadership, locker room presence to set this young team straight because we know the issues last season. People going out partying too much and not taking road trips seriously. That's why Taylor Jenkins had to put his foot down, as we're all aware of. And they got guys who are going to be legitimate vets on this team, get this team going down the right path, and I love it. I think it's an awesome move by Kleiman, by Memphis and the whole front office. And I think Derrick Rose, heck, I hope he retires in Memphis. I really do. I hope his last playing days are on the Grizzlies because they are, like I said, we love Derrick Rose and he's very thankful for his time in Memphis, and I'm sure he's excited to be here because we definitely are.
Dude, yeah. Speaking of the Derrick Rose jersey that you referenced, Daniel wanted me to ask you: are you more of a shirt under the jersey kind of guy, or
God,
just let the guns out? Dude, with the jersey,
I think I'm a little bit. I'm maybe a little too self-conscious to be total guns out. I remember I had a phase where slight flex. And I used to be really big. I used to be like 300 pounds. And the slimmest I got was like 175. So I lost a lot of weight in my lifetime. I'm not 175 anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not that. I'm much bigger now. I'm not 303 or I'm not that, but I'm not 175. So maybe I'm a little too self-conscious. But back in my skinnier days, I'd show the guns. I'd go no shirt, but now I think I'd wear a shirt. But maybe for you, Daniel, I'll go no shirt. How about that? I'll do it just for you.
Okay, dude. Okay. Daniel appreciates. He appreciates the guns. He appreciates the guns. Speaking about big guys, speaking about the front court rotation, right? We're gonna round out the show with this, man. So the Grizzlies front court, I think is something that is emerging into a very interesting development, a very interesting storyline, right? Because, let's get to the obvious. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a centerpiece of this front court. No, that's not rocket science. Steven Adams, for the foreseeable future, is the future center. He's just starting that 2-year extension this season, I believe. And so we know those guys are going to be there opening night. We hope Steven Adams' knee is okay. Looks fine. He's doing his off-season training. I'm not concerned about that. But we got to talk about after that, right? Because, Santi Aldama, right? We saw him emerge as a player last season, get more comfortable overall. I thought he made a lot of offensive strides last season. The defense as well. It's still a work in progress, but offensively, I think he showed his skill set, not only as a floor spacer, but as a finisher around the rim is something to really be excited about. Yeah. But you also got Brandon Clark, who had the Achilles injury. We know he's done for this team. He's that energizer off the bench with that athleticism, with that bounce, right? But we know he's not going to be available until around the All-Star break.
Around February. Yeah,
around February. Reports are he's actually ahead of schedule in many ways, just given everything. But we know he's not going to be there when the season tips off on the court. But Xavier Tillman will be. He's going to be that backup big. We know the presence that he played. He's a phenomenal defender. He's just a great glue guy. He's a great role guy who knows how to defend in space, who knows how to get his own baskets here and there. But Kenneth Lofton Jr., right? We just saw him have a monster summer league, looking like one of the best players on that court. But you have to think about just how this front court is kind of stacked up moving forward, because just behind him, like, look, if Brandon Clark and Xavier Tillman and Santi Aldama are all occupying those bench spots for the Grizzlies, that doesn't leave a ton of room for Kenneth Lofton Jr. And I hate to be that guy that thinks ahead to next season, that is always thinking ahead. But look, if we want Kenneth Lofton Jr. to truly emerge into himself, and front office has said this guy is a pivotal part of our future, this guy is a building block for the future of the Grizzlies. Look, somebody's going to have to be the odd man out between Santi Aldama, Brandon Clark, and Xavier Tillman, right? But okay, Xavier Tillman's coming back. He is going to be on the $1.6 million team option. Incredible value. Like, that might be one of the best contracts in the league.
Yeah.
Like, not that we talk about that. Yeah. That's all that he did in last season's playoffs. But look, someone's got to be the odd man out. Like, you can't keep all these guys. You could, in theory, pay Xavier Tillman. Interesting point, right? Like, the Grizzlies could have declined the team option, right, and signed him to a more friendly extension, because if he had, because I remember they talked about this on the Hoop Collective podcast, right? If the Grizzlies had declined Xavier Tillman's option, he would have immediately gone into free agency, and they could have signed him to a more team-friendly deal, as opposed to now he's going to play out the team option, directly go into unrestricted free agency. So you compare that, right? In RFA, he'd be more inclined to sign a team-friendly deal because, he has less leverage, and because his yearly salary would jump pretty tremendously year to year. But the Grizzlies decided, okay, we want the short-term gain. We want to have Xavier Tillman in the building next season on that great contract. But that means that he's going to be in UFA, and he's going to have the market all to himself. So I want to get your thoughts, man, on what do you kind of think this front court is headed towards, and even this season, like, do you think Kenneth Lofton Jr. can get a chance to shine, just given the depth of this Grizzlies front court?
It's an awesome question, and I think you raised a really, really good point, especially about X and his current contract, and possible and moving forward. I think in terms of juniors, just specifically, no Brandon Clark until February will help, because there are minutes to be had. As we know, it's Steven Adams and Jaren Jackson as the closing two in the front court. We know that. And then we still got backup minutes. You still need guys to play 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes a game, depending on the matchup and who's hot. You still need the minutes. So I think Junior this is his chance. He showed out in Summer League. They kept him on the roster last season when Steven Adams got hurt. They signed him to a deal, made him guaranteed. So it shows that they do buy in and recognize Junior's talent. So this is his shot, no question. This is his chance with no Brandon Clark until mid-February, hopefully earlier, but likely mid-February, maybe at the earliest January. So with definite time, this is Junior's chance. And I actually think lineups where you've got Junior at the 5, or Junior 5, Trip at the 5, and Junior at the 4, and you run out lineups with Trip, Junior, Roddy at the 3 with a little more defensive bulk and size as well. Bane and Marcus
very
Smart.
versatile.
Yeah, I think that has a possibility to be a positive lineup on both sides, defensively and offensively as well. Because you obviously got a defensive player of the year, 2 of them, and Smart and Jaren, to help out on the defensive side. But offensively, Trip's versatile. We know Junior's versatile. Roddy as well can use his body to get to the rim and even knock down open threes. We know Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart in a similar vein as a playmaker and a guy who can make the right reads. So I think that lineup could be interesting. You could throw out some fascinating lineup combinations, and it'll be cool to see the lineup breakdowns as the season goes on, what Jenkins and the coaching staffs try and tinker with. But I think that's a lineup to low-key look out for because it could be useful, it could be positive. Aldama, I think he's more of a wing, maybe hot take or not. I don't really see him as a big just because defensively it's a struggle. It's a struggle. He's just too slender of a human. He's even if he bulks up a little bit, he hasn't shown instincts in terms of timing. He just doesn't shown it to me to be an interior defender. So I think, but offensively, he's a stud. He's got genuine offensive skill. He's smooth. He makes really good reads. He can shoot the ball, put the ball on the floor as well. So I think he's more of a wing. So maybe you slide him there. Heck, maybe you do Jaren, Santi, Junior, Bane, Smart, or something like that. Because I think there's still ways to incorporate Junior into a lineup, especially with Brandon Clark being out until February. But it's an interesting ordeal. It's a very interesting ordeal, and it's cool to see. We saw Lofton in person at Summer League, and this dude, he's just a spitting image of Zach Randolph. I mean, I know everyone says it, but
the post playmaking is
that little jab. He'll front you jab and then fade, and you're just thinking, wow. Did I just see Zach Randolph incarnate? Like you just watch Zebo highlights. 50% of Zebo highlights are him jab stepping, going nowhere, just jabbing, and then just fading and hitting a shot in someone's face. And Junior does that really well. And I think not only is the Zebo stuff, it's a fun comparison offensively. I mean, defensively, Zebo wasn't stellar on defense either. He wasn't anything special, but he had a team around him to kind of mask his deficiencies defensively. And Marc Gasol was a defensive player of the year as well. Tony Allen, Mike Conley. I mean, we know the crew. So I think you can do a similar thing with Lofton, where you can have guys around him to kind of mask his defensive deficiencies, but allow him to shine offensively. So if there were a time for him to have his chance, this is it. And I think he'll get his chance too.
Dude, I am salivating at the mouth of the thought of Kenneth Lofton Jr., Jaren Jackson lineups, because you could have Lofton in the post being an offensive hub as a playmaker. You could have Jaren either on the perimeter. You can have him inside, like they can run a 2-man. I think just that versatility between Kenneth Lofton Jr. and Jaren Jackson Jr. opens up so many possibilities for the Memphis Grizzlies in terms of the skill sets of both of those guys offensively and what they can do. And I'm really excited to see that combination of lineups this season, and just really in general see Kenneth Lofton Jr. with more of the main squad of the Grizzlies, because I felt like you and I saw over that summer league experience. I think Kenneth Lofton Jr. he not only did he know he was the best player on that court, but he acted like he was vocal. He called for the ball on every possession. He called out defensive. He called out. He was a leader defensively. And so I think when you put him on this main squad, on this main Memphis Grizzlies team, and just let his talent flourish, I think the sky's the limit. I just wonder about the opportunity, knowing that you have so many other talented guys in the fold there. And that's an interesting point on Santi Aldama, especially with the wing position, because I also agree that Santi Aldama, given his body frame, given his given the slenderness of his frame, might be better suited to a wing. But we also know that Santi Aldama, defending in space, defending on the perimeter, it's tough. It's not. I don't know. I don't know if I'm fully ready. I don't know if I'm fully ready to say he's a long-term wing, but I don't know. Maybe he shows me something in the FIBA World Cup. But I think offensively, right? You consider his skill set as a floor spacer, as somebody who can handle the ball, who can be a secondary playmaker. That's something to be excited about. And you also got to consider that after this season, Santi Aldama is extension eligible. As is Zaire Williams, but front court, but still he's extension eligible. Xavier Tillman is still in theory extension eligible. They could sign an extension up until the start of the season. So I think this Grizzlies front court is very talented, but also getting very, very slowly getting very crowded. And you can't pay everybody, right? Because you think about just the cap room, right? Desmond Bane's Desmond Bane's max contract is going to kick in, not this season. He's going to be on the last year's deal, but next season. We know the Grizzlies are going to be taxpayers in the 2024-2025 season. That's not a question. So it's just who you can't pay. Who are you going to pay? Unless you want to push that, really get into that second apron. And we know the penalties with that are very stiff. The Grizzlies are going to have to make front court decisions. And they're going to have to make them not next season, but they're going to have to make them very soon. But we can still, that's just me. I'm getting ahead of myself. We can still enjoy the journey. We can still enjoy that Taylor Jenkins is going to have so many lineup possibilities with Kenneth Lofton Jr. being more in the fold with this team.
Yeah, and the cool thing about having the depth, though, and yes, it's kind of a log jam, but there's time for these guys to prove it. It's kind of like a show me period for these guys, and then as you move forward, we're gonna have the same sentiment. We already have Zaire coming up, but we'll have the same sentiment with Roddy and LaRavia drafted in the same class. We're gonna see who in 2 years who's gonna stand out between those two, who's gonna deserve the more money. And obviously they're teammates. They want to see each other improve, but at the same time, they got an NBA career to look out for. They got their own careers to look out for. So we'll see. The front office will have some difficult decisions moving forward, but it's a luxury that I'm happy to be talking about with you, because it's a rare luxury for teams that have these issues. And their first world problems. These are Grizzlies problems. It's not that bad at the end of the day to worry about, oh man, which young player are we going to have to pay $12 million to at the end of the day, because we know who our studs are. We're locked. We know our big three. It's now just everyone else. And that's a luxury that not a lot of teams, not a lot, basically no teams, very, very few teams in the NBA have, knowing who their big three are, knowing what guys they're going to build their future around. And it's just the other guys. It's just trying to figure out, trying to develop, who are they going to pay, who are they going to focus and put attention on. And that's a good problem to have. So yeah, I think it'll be fascinating to see what they do moving forward, but I'm sure they got a plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Francis, before I let you go, I talked about it earlier in the show, the Steven Adams off-season workout videos, but I'm gonna pose a question to you. An over-under, right? Over-under Steven Adams 2 3-pointers attempted. I'm not talking half-court heaves. Yeah, I'm not talking half-court heaves at the end of the buzzer. I'm not saying I'm not talking. So take that out of the equation. Steven Adams over/under 2 3-point attempts.
Oh, I'll take the over. I'll be gutsy.
Oh, okay.
I'll be gutsy. I'll take the over. Hopefully we saw Rudy Gobert shoot a 3 in for France. Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
And he made it.
Yeah.
He made it. And
he did.
Are pigs flying? Who knows? Who knows? Maybe Steve-O, I think the better question is, who shoots more threes, him or Ben Simmons? I think that's another, just who's going to shoot more threes, him or Ben.
Okay.
I think I'm going to take Steven Adams.
Okay. I see Daniel's taking the under. I'm gonna just stay firm. I think too. Just
yeah.
I think he might attempt, but is it not crazy that at least the way I saw it, that 3-point, again, off-season workout, but that corner 3-point form looked way better than his free throw form. Yeah. Way better. Am I tripping or what's that?
Yeah. It was basically one motion compared to his free throw form, where it's 3 motions. So I don't know. Who knows? We'll see.
Dude, absolutely. But Francis Carlotta, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Again, if you guys are not plugged into Francis Carlotta, please. He writes amazing articles about the Memphis Tigers for Bluff City Media. He is also a huge contributor to the Up and Under podcast, which I had the pleasure of coming on. Again, Francis is just, we're hoop heads, we're hoop lovers. So please check him out. Please check out anything you want to plug, Francis, yourself coming out soon.
Yeah, I've got an article talking about how this roster for the Memphis Tigers is really a culmination of Penny's time over the past 5 seasons with Memphis. I mean, his first seasons have not been perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think he's learned from mistakes he's made in the past. And this roster from top to bottom, it's looking like this most talented roster, his highest floor and his highest ceiling. So I break that down, talk about rosters in the past and how it sets up to where we're looking at for the 2023-2024 team. And hopefully y'all check that out. It'll be out in hopefully a couple of days. So yeah, definitely check that out. And I also just remembered that my Twitter profile picture is me in that Derrick Rose jersey, and I'm not wearing an undershirt. So I was also in Mexico, and it was hot. So that's also why I wasn't wearing an undershirt. So maybe I'm just too self-conscious. Maybe I can rock the no undershirt on a more consistent basis. But I just realized, I was like, oh wow, I said I'm more of an undershirt guy, but my Twitter profile picture is me in that exact jersey without a shirt. So I don't know. Maybe I just have to have more confidence. Maybe.
Dude, absolutely, man. Dude, after seeing the Tigers in the Dominican Republic and that showcase, I am pumped to see the talent of this team. I think is unprecedented in Penny's career. So I'm very excited to see that. I think it's going to be a huge season for the Tigers. I think it's just going to be huge in the development and just the product that we see on the floor. That team is going to be special this year. And yeah, real excited to have a guy like you covering that. So Francis, thank you so much for coming on to the show tonight.
Thanks, man. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. And that is all for the Grizz 901 podcast for tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will be here next week, as always, with another special guest, Mr. Bryson Wright. He is, in many ways, the face of the social Memphis Grizzlies. Really excited to have him on. But thank you guys for tuning in on this Tuesday night to the Grizz 901 podcast. I am your host, Brandon McKeejee. And until then, Grizz Nation, keep grinding.